Step into a realm where the written word becomes immortal, where stories transcend time and space, and where the deepest questions of existence are laid bare. In this video, we embark on a journey through 5 monumental masterpieces, tales that challenge, inspire, and forever alter the way we see the world. Begin with the windmills and wild dreams of Miguel de Cervantes' Don Quixote, where an aging knight and his loyal squire redefine courage, folly, and the boundless power of imagination. Ride alongside them as reality and fantasy collide, proving that the spirit of adventure knows no bounds. Then march through the grand tapestry of Leo Tolstoy's War and Peace, a sweeping epic of love and loss set against the brutal backdrop of Napoleon's invasion. Witness how individuals shape history and are in turn shaped by it. Next, descend into the stark existentialism of Albert Camus' The Stranger, a tale that forces us to confront life's absurdity and the chilling indifference of the universe. From there, immerse yourself in the hauntingly fractured world of William Faulkner's The Sound and the Fury, where time twists and memory falters, revealing the tragic disintegration of a Southern family. Finally, tread the dark alleys of Fyodor Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, where morality, guilt, and redemption entwine in a psychological masterpiece that shakes the soul. These aren't just books. They are worlds waiting to be explored, lessons waiting to be learned, and reflections of the timeless truths of humanity. Let's dive in. Imagine the sun-drenched plains of La Mancha in early 17th century Spain, where golden fields stretch to meet the horizon under a brilliant azure sky. The air is filled with the scent of wild herbs and the distant hum of cicadas. In a modest village nestled among these vast landscapes lives a middle-aged gentleman named Alonso Quixote. A man of leisure, Quixote spends his days immersed in books of chivalry, losing himself in tales of noble knights, gallant quests, and heroic deeds. Over time, his obsession with these fantastical stories consumes him. The lines between reality and fiction blur until one day, Quixote emerges with a resolute declaration. He shall become a knight-errant, roaming the world to right wrongs and bring justice. Adopting the illustrious name Don Quixote de la Mancha, he dons a suit of rusted armor, patches together an old helmet, and mounts his scrawny but faithful horse, Rocinante. Thus begins an extraordinary adventure that will test the limits of imagination, sanity, and the very nature of reality. Don Quixote believes that the world suffers from a lack of chivalry and that it's his destiny to restore it. His first order of business is to find a lady love to whom he can dedicate his noble deeds. He selects Aldonza Lorenzo, a local peasant girl, and envisions her as Dulcinea del Toboso, a noble lady of unparalleled beauty and virtue. Though she is unaware of his existence, Dulcinea becomes the beacon that guides his quests. Armed with his makeshift armor and an unwavering belief in his mission, Don Quixote sets out alone. However, his initial foray into knighthood is less than triumphant. Mistaking an inn for a castle, he insists that the innkeeper knight him. Amused, the innkeeper plays along, performing a mock knighting ceremony. Don Quixote, oblivious to the jest, accepts his new title with solemn pride. Emboldened, Don Quixote ventures forth, seeking adventures worthy of his newfound status. He soon encounters his most iconic challenge. Spotting 30 or 40 windmills scattered across the plain, he perceives them as towering giants threatening the land. Ignoring the obvious, he charges at them with his lance poised. The reality of wooden blades meets his fantasy head-on, and he is swiftly knocked to the ground. Bruised but undeterred, Don Quixote blames malevolent enchanters for transforming the giants into windmills at the last moment. This incident epitomizes the central conflict of the story, the chasm between Don Quixote's idealistic illusions and the tangible world around him. Realizing that every knight needs a squire, Don Quixote convinces his neighbor, a simple farmer named Sancho Panza, to join him. Promising governance of an island and untold riches, Don Quixote lures Sancho away from his humble life. Riding a stubborn donkey named Dapple, Sancho accompanies his master, providing a grounded counterpoint to Don Quixote's lofty delusions. Sancho is earthy, practical, and fond of proverbs. While he recognizes the absurdity of many situations, his loyalty to Don Quixote grows. He often tries to steer his master toward reason, but is frequently swayed by the promise of personal gain and the sheer momentum of Don Quixote's convictions. The duo's journey is a tapestry of misadventures, blending comedy and tragedy. They come across a group of friars escorting a lady in a carriage. Convinced the friars are enchanters who have captured a princess, Don Quixote attacks them, resulting in chaos and injury. In another episode, they encounter two flocks of sheep on a dusty road. Don Quixote perceives them as opposing armies and charges into the fray, only to be pelted with stones by bewildered shepherds. Each misinterpretation leads to physical harm and further cements his belief in a world filled with enchantment and villainy. One day, Don Quixote spots a barber riding along, wearing a basin on his head to shield it from the rain. Mistaking it for the legendary helmet of Mambrino, a powerful artifact in his chivalric tales, he confronts the barber. The terrified man flees, leaving the basin behind. Don Quixote proudly dons it as his helmet, oblivious to its true nature. This incident reinforces his propensity to reshape reality to fit his narratives. In a significant and consequential adventure, Don Quixote and Sancho come across a chain gang of prisoners being escorted by armed guards. Don Quixote inquires about their crimes, and upon hearing their stories, which are embellished and downplayed by the convicts, he decides it's unjust for them to be imprisoned. He attacks the guards, freeing the prisoners. However, instead of gratitude, the convicts turn on their liberator, pelting Don Quixote and Sancho with stones and stealing their belongings. This harsh outcome highlights the dangerous consequences of Don Quixote's idealism when applied without understanding or discernment. Concerned about Don Quixote's well-being, his friends, the local priest and barber, devise a plan to bring him home. Disguising themselves, they intercept him at an inn, which Don Quixote believes is enchanted. They convince him that he is under a spell and transport him back to his village in a wooden cage, claiming only his presence there can break the enchantment. During this journey, Don Quixote engages in deep philosophical discussions about fate, free will, and the nature of reality. These conversations reveal his intelligence and the depth of his delusions, prompting readers to question where madness ends and wisdom begins. After a brief respite at home, Don Quixote and Sancho embark on a second expedition. Their fame is spread, and they attract the attention of a mischievous duke and duchess who decide to amuse themselves at the pair's expense. Inviting them to their castle, they orchestrate a series of elaborate pranks. They convince Don Quixote that the only way to lift an enchantment on Dulcinea is for Sancho to endure a brutal regimen of of self-flagellation. They appoint Sancho as governor of the non-existent Insula Barataria, where he surprisingly demonstrates wisdom and fairness in his judgments. Despite the initial thrill, Sancho becomes disillusioned with the trappings of power and longs for his simple life. These episodes explore themes of power, corruption, and the often thin line between reality and illusion. The Duke and Duchess's manipulation exposes the cruelty that can arise from boredom and privilege. As their journey continues, Don Quixote is challenged by the Knight of the White Moon, who is actually his friend Samson Carrasco in disguise. Samson hopes to cure Don Quixote by defeating him in combat and forcing him to abandon his quests. They duel on the beach in Barcelona, and Don Quixote is decisively beaten. Bound by the chivalry code, Don Quixote agrees to the terms of his defeat. He must return home and refrain from knight-errantry for a year. This moment is pivotal, marking the beginning of the end of his adventures and the erosion of his delusions. On the journey back to La Mancha, Don Quixote and Sancho contemplate their experiences. Don Quixote considers adopting the pastoral life of shepherds, envisioning new, idyllic adventures. However, upon returning home, his health declines rapidly. In his final days, Don Quixote awakens from his madness. He renounces his chivalric fantasies, recognizing the folly of his pursuits. As Alonso Quixano once more, he seeks forgiveness from his niece and friends. Sancho, heartbroken by his master's transformation, pleads with him to return to their adventures, but Don Quixote gently refuses. Surrounded by those who care for him, he passes away peacefully. His death is both tragic and profound, leaving readers to ponder the thin veil between dreams and reality and the cost of unyielding idealism. Don Quixote is a man of contradictions. His madness is rooted in a noble desire to infuse the world with honor and justice. Despite the absurdity of his actions, his intentions are pure. He embodies the conflict between aspiration and reality, challenging societal norms and inspiring others to see beyond the mundane. His transformation from Alonso Quixano to Don Quixote and back again illustrates the fluidity of identity and the power of belief. Sancho Panza begins as a foil to Don Quixote, but evolves into a complex character. His initial motivation is self-interest, spurred by the promise of wealth and status. However, his journey fosters growth. Sancho's practicality is tempered by affection for his master. He becomes a voice of reason and, paradoxically, starts to adopt some of Don Quixote's idealism. His time as governor reveals his innate wisdom and fairness, surprising both himself and others. The priest and the barber represent societal efforts to enforce conformity. Their intentions are caring, but also paternalistic. They symbolize the tension between individual freedom and social responsibility, questioning the ethics of imposing one's reality on another. The Duke and Duchess showcase the darker side of human nature. Their manipulation of Don Quixote and Sancho for amusement highlights issues of power, class, and empathy. Their actions serve as a critique of those who exploit others for entertainment without considering the consequences. The novel delves into the nature of reality versus illusion. Don Quixote's perception shapes his world, raising questions about objective truth and subjective experience. Cervantes invites readers to consider whether madness lies in seeing the world differently or in the inability to accept alternative perspectives. Idealism and practicality clash continuously. Don Quixote's unwavering adherence to chivalric codes contrasts with the often harsh realities he faces. This tension explores the value and danger of ideals. Is it better to confront reality head-on or to reshape it with imagination? The power of literature and storytelling is central. Don Quixote's madness stems from his voracious reading. The novel examines how stories can inspire, delude, and transform individuals. It reflects on the responsibility of authors and the impact of fiction on society. Social critique is woven throughout. The rigid class structures, the cruelty of the Duke and Duchess, and the varied reactions of those Don Quixote meets highlight inequalities and moral shortcomings of the time. Cervantes uses satire to expose hypocrisy and advocate for compassion. Cervantes paints a vivid picture of Spain's diverse landscapes. The sun-baked plains of La Mancha, the rugged mountains, and the bustling cities provide a rich backdrop. The detailed descriptions immerse readers in the era's culture, from the architecture of inns and castles to the attire of nobles and peasants. The atmosphere shifts seamlessly between comedic misadventures and profound introspection. The lively inns become stages for chaos and revelry, while the open roads allow for contemplation and the forging of the bond between Don Quixote and Sancho. The story evokes laughter through its absurd situations and witty dialogue. Don Quixote's earnestness in the face of obvious reality is both endearing and amusing. Yet, beneath the humor lies a vein of melancholy. His constant failures and the scorn he faces elicit sympathy. Sancho's loyalty and the evolution of his relationship with Don Quixote add emotional depth. Their mutual care becomes a touching testament to friendship transcending social barriers. The final chapters stir a sense of loss. Don Quixote's return to sanity and subsequent death force a confrontation with the end of dreams. It's a poignant reminder of mortality and the fragile nature of human aspirations. Don Quixote is more than a satirical romp. It's a profound exploration of the human spirit. Cervantes masterfully balances humor with pathos, creating characters that are simultaneously larger than life and deeply relatable. The novel challenges readers to reflect on their own perceptions of reality, the pursuit of ideals, and the societal norms that define sanity. It questions whether it's madness to dream or madness to suppress one's dreams in favor of conformity. Don Quixote's legacy endures because he represents the eternal struggle between who we are and who we aspire to be. His story invites us to embrace the power of imagination while acknowledging the importance of grounding ourselves in reality. It's a delicate balance, much like tilting at windmills, foolish to some, but perhaps the only way to truly feel alive. As we close the pages on Don Quixote's adventures, we're left contemplating the values that drive us and the paths we choose. His journey may be filled with misadventures, but it's also a celebration of the boundless possibilities that arise when one dares to dream. Imagine the grand ballrooms of aristocratic Russia glittering under the warm glow of chandeliers. The air is thick with the scent of perfumed ladies and the murmur of high society's whispers. Beyond the opulence lies a nation on the brink of monumental change, where personal destinies intertwine with the sweeping tides of history. Welcome to Leo Tolstoy's War and Peace, a literary masterpiece that invites you into the lives of unforgettable characters navigating love, ambition, and the brutal realities of war. The story begins in 1805, as Russia awaits the looming threat of Napoleon Bonaparte's expansion across Europe. In the heart of St. Petersburg, a soiree at the elegant salon of Anna Pavlovna Scherer sets the stage. Here, we meet Prince Andrei Bolkonsky, a handsome and intelligent nobleman disillusioned with the superficiality of high society. Craving purpose, he decides to join the army, leaving behind his pregnant wife, Lise. Meanwhile, in Moscow, the warm and chaotic household of the Rostov family introduces us to Count Ilya Rostov, his wife Countess Natalia, and their children, spirited Natasha, impetuous Nikolai, young Petya, and thoughtful Sonia, their impoverished cousin. The Rostovs embody the vibrancy of Russian familial life, with open doors and hearts full of emotion. Across town, Pierre Bezukhov, the illegitimate son of a wealthy count, grapples with his identity. Awkward yet earnest, Pierre inherits a vast fortune upon his father's death, thrusting him into the upper echelons of society. His sudden wealth attracts the attention of the cunning Prince Vasily Kuragin and his beautiful but manipulative daughter, Helene. Pierre, seeking meaning in his newfound status, is coerced into marrying Helene. The marriage quickly sours as Helene's infidelity becomes apparent. Distraught, Pierre duels with her lover, Fedya Dolokhov, wounding him and plunging Pierre into a spiritual crisis. Simultaneously, Prince Andrei experiences the horrors of the Battle of Austerlitz. Wounded and left for dead on the battlefield, he gazes up at the vast sky, contemplating the insignificance of his previous ambitions. This near-death experience profoundly changes him, sowing seeds of existential reflection. Back in Moscow, Nikolai Rostov joins the army, filled with youthful patriotism. He witnesses the grim realities of war, challenging his naive perceptions of glory. His family anxiously awaits his letters, the war casting a long shadow over their once joyful home. As years pass, Natasha transforms from a carefree girl into a captivating young woman. Her beauty and vivacious spirit enchant those around her. At a grand ball, she meets Prince Andrei, now a widower after Lisa's tragic death during childbirth. The two share a dance that ignites a deep and immediate connection. Despite their age difference, Andrei is drawn to Natasha's zest for life. He proposes marriage, and she joyfully accepts. However, Andrei's father, the stern Prince Nikolai Bolkonsky, insists on a year-long delay before the wedding. During Andrei's absence, Natasha becomes vulnerable to the seductive charms of Anatol Kuragin, Helene's brother. Anatol schemes to elope with Natasha, exploiting her youthful innocence. The plan fails, but the scandal devastates Natasha. Feeling betrayed, Andrei breaks off the engagement, leaving Natasha consumed by guilt and despair. Witnessing Natasha's anguish, Pierre feels a profound empathy for her. His own life is in turmoil. Disillusioned with his marriage and societal expectations, he seeks solace in Freemasonry, hoping to find moral clarity and purpose. Pierre's spiritual journey is fraught with contradictions. He oscillates between lofty ideals and hedonistic indulgences, reflecting his internal struggle. His friendship with Natasha deepens, and he realizes he loves her, though he keeps these feelings hidden, believing himself unworthy. In 1812, Napoleon invades Russia, bringing war to the nation's doorstep. The Russian army, including Nikolai and Andrei, prepares to face the formidable French forces. The Battle of Borodino becomes a pivotal point, a brutal and bloody confrontation that epitomizes the chaos of war. Prince Andrei is gravely wounded during the battle. As he lies on the battlefield, he confronts his mortality and the futility of his previous pursuits. His thoughts turn to Natasha, and he realizes he still loves her. Meanwhile, Moscow is engulfed in panic. The Rostovs, along with countless others, flee the city. In their haste, they offer their carts to transport wounded soldiers, unknowingly aiding Prince Andrei. Natasha discovers him among the injured, and their reunion is both heart-wrenching and tender. She nurses him with unwavering devotion, but despite her care, Andrei succumbs to his injuries, leaving Natasha devastated yet spiritually awakened. As Moscow burns under Napoleon's occupation, Pierre remains in the city, driven by a misguided desire to assassinate Napoleon and end the war. He witnesses the suffering of the people firsthand, which profoundly affects him. Arrested by the French as a suspected incendiary, Pierre endures harsh imprisonment. During captivity, Pierre meets Platon Karateev, a humble peasant whose simple wisdom and acceptance of life's hardships inspire Pierre. Through Platon, Pierre learns about resilience, kindness, and the strength found in embracing the present moment. This relationship marks a turning point in Pierre's existential journey. The French retreat from Moscow becomes a death march, with soldiers and prisoners alike facing starvation and the brutal Russian winter. Platon dies along the way, but Pierre survives, emerging from captivity with a renewed sense of self and purpose. With the war over, life slowly returns to a semblance of normalcy. Natasha, grieving yet matured by her experiences, reconnects with Pierre. Recognizing the depth of their bond, they marry, finding solace and happiness in each other. Nikolai Rostov returns home to find his family in financial ruin. Shouldering responsibility, he marries Princess Maria Bolkonskaya, Andrei's kind-hearted sister. Their union is both a merging of families and a testament to enduring love amidst adversity. Pierre Bezukhov transforms from an aimless, naive nobleman into a thoughtful and compassionate individual. His struggles with identity, morality, and purpose reflect the universal quest for meaning. Through suffering and introspection, Pierre discovers that true fulfillment lies not in wealth or status, but in genuine human connections and selfless acts. Natasha Rostov embodies the journey from innocence to wisdom. Her exuberance and emotional depth make her a compelling character. Natasha's mistakes and heartaches are integral to her growth, shaping her into a woman capable of profound love and empathy. Prince Andrei Bolkonsky represents the disillusionment with societal expectations. His experiences in war and personal loss lead him to question the values he once held dear. Andrei's inner conflict and ultimate reconciliation with his feelings for Natasha highlight the complexity of the human heart. Nikolai Rostov faces the harsh realities of his romanticized notions of war and honor. His evolution from a reckless youth to a responsible head of the family underscores themes of duty, sacrifice, and personal integrity. Princess Maria Bolkonskaya is a beacon of spiritual strength and compassion. Her resilience in the face of her father's tyranny and her capacity for forgiveness enrich the narrative, emphasizing the power of kindness. War and Peace delves into the futility and devastation of war, juxtaposed with the enduring human spirit. Tolstoy critiques the glorification of military conquest, illustrating how war inflicts profound suffering on individuals and societies. The novel explores the complexity of history and the idea that great events are shaped not just by leaders, but by the collective actions of many. Tolstoy challenges the notion of predestined fate, suggesting that free will and personal choices significantly impact the course of life. Love, in its many forms, is a central theme. Romantic love, familial bonds, and deep friendships drive the characters' actions and growth. Through these relationships, Tolstoy examines the capacity for forgiveness, the pain of betrayal, and the joy of reconciliation. Spirituality and existential inquiry permeate the narrative. Characters grapple with questions about life's meaning, the existence of God, and the nature of happiness. These introspections invite readers to reflect on their own beliefs and values. Tolstoy's rich descriptions transport readers to the opulent halls of Russian nobility and the stark battlefields alike. The contrast between the glittering social events and the grim realities of war creates a vivid backdrop. The Russian landscape plays a significant role. The serene countryside estates, the bustling streets of Moscow and St. Petersburg, and the desolate expanses where armies clash. The changing seasons mirror the emotional arcs of the characters, from the hopeful blossoms of spring to the bleakness of winter's chill. Tolstoy captures the cultural nuances of the era, including the intricacies of class structure, the influence of French language and customs among the aristocracy, and the deep-rooted traditions of Russian society. The narrative elicits a spectrum of emotions: love and heartbreak, hope and despair, fear and courage. Readers become deeply invested in the characters' lives, sharing in their triumphs and tragedies. Moments like Natasha's enchanting singing at a family gathering, Pierre's epiphany under the starry sky, and Andrei's poignant reflections before his death resonate with profound humanity. The devastation wrought by war is palpable. The loss of loved ones, the destruction of homes, and the psychological scars left behind. Yet, the story also celebrates resilience, the capacity for renewal, and the enduring power of love. War and Peace is not merely a historical novel. It's an exploration of the human condition. Tolstoy weaves together personal narratives and grand historical events to illustrate how individual lives are both shaped by and contribute to the broader currents of history. The characters' journeys underscore the search for meaning in a turbulent world. Their transformations reflect the possibilities of personal growth through adversity, love, and self-discovery. Tolstoy invites readers to contemplate profound questions. What is the essence of happiness? How do we reconcile the inevitability of death with the desire for a meaningful life? Can we find peace amidst chaos? In the end, War and Peace offers a hopeful message. Despite the inevitability of suffering and the complexities of existence, it is through genuine human connections, empathy, and embracing the present moment that we find purpose and fulfillment. As we conclude this epic journey, we're left with a rich tapestry of emotions and thoughts, a reflection on the timeless themes that continue to resonate in our own lives. Tolstoy's masterpiece endures because it speaks to the core of what it means to be human, reminding us that even in the face of immense challenges, there is beauty, love, and the potential for profound inner peace. Imagine the sun-soaked streets of Algiers in the 1940s, where the Mediterranean Sea kisses the shore and the heat hangs heavy in the air. In this vibrant yet oppressive atmosphere lives Mesault, a young French Algerian whose life unfolds in the pages of Albert Camus' The Stranger. This is a story that delves deep into the human psyche, exploring themes of absurdity, alienation, and the inevitable confrontation with society's expectations. The novel begins with a stark and unsettling line. Mesault's mother has died. He receives a telegram informing him of her passing at the nursing home in Marengo, some distance from Algiers. Mesault's reaction is unnervingly indifferent. He arranges for time off work, not out of grief, but out of obligation. His emotional detachment sets the tone for his character, a man disconnected from conventional feelings. At the vigil, Mesault refuses to view his mother's body. Instead, he observes the other attendees, noting their behaviors without judgment or empathy. The bright lights, the heat, and the discomfort occupy his thoughts more than his mother's death. During the funeral procession under the blazing sun, he is more perturbed by the physical strain than by sorrow. This lack of expected emotion puzzles those around him, but goes unquestioned for now. Upon returning to Algiers, Mesault seeks solace not in mourning, but in sensory pleasures. He encounters Marie Cardona, a former co-worker with whom he sparks a spontaneous romance. They spend the weekend swimming, watching a comedic movie, and engaging in a physical relationship. Marie is lively and expressive, a stark contrast to Mesault's passivity. When Marie asks if he loves her, Mesault responds with honesty that borders on apathy. He doesn't think so, but it doesn't matter to him. Marie is intrigued by his candidness, mistaking it for sincerity. Their relationship deepens, but Mesault remains emotionally distant, content to drift along without attachment or commitment. Mesault's neighbor, Raymond Sintz, is a man of dubious character rumored to be a pimp. Raymond seeks Mesault's help in dealing with his unfaithful Arab girlfriend. He asks Mesault to write a letter luring her back so he can humiliate her. Without moral hesitation, Mesault agrees, seeing no reason to refuse. This act entangles Mesault in Raymond's conflicts. When the girlfriend returns and is subsequently beaten by Raymond, the police become involved. Mesault testifies on Raymond's behalf, further aligning himself with his neighbor's questionable actions. This complicity underscores Mesault's indifferent morality. He doesn't distinguish between right and wrong, as society expects. On a scorching Sunday, Mesault, Marie, and Raymond visit a beach house owned by Raymond's friend, Masson. The day is idyllic until they encounter two Arab men, one being the brother of Raymond's girlfriend. Tensions rise, leading to a confrontation where Raymond is slashed with a knife. Later, Mesault wanders alone on the beach, oppressed by the heat and the relentless sunlight reflecting off the sea. He comes across one of the Arabs resting by a spring. The atmosphere is thick with anticipation. Mesault, overwhelmed by the physical sensations, the blinding light, the sweat, the pounding headache, feels disconnected from reality. In a moment devoid of clear reasoning, Mesault shoots the Arab man. The gunshot echoes, and time seems to stand still. He fires 4 more times into the motionless body, an act that seals his fate. This senseless killing becomes the pivotal point of the story, thrusting Mesault into the legal system and societal scrutiny. Mesault is arrested and placed in jail, where he grapples not with guilt, but with the inconvenience of confinement. He misses the simple pleasures, cigarettes, the sea, physical intimacy. His lawyer and the magistrate are baffled by his lack of remorse or conventional emotions. They attempt to impose narratives upon him, seeking motives that align with societal understanding. During the trial, the focus shifts from the murder to Massault's character. Witnesses testify not about the crime, but about his behavior at his mother's funeral, his indifference, his leisure activities immediately afterward. The prosecutor paints him as a soulless monster, arguing that his inability to cry at his mother's funeral indicates a heart capable of murder. Massault remains passive throughout the proceedings, accepting the absurdity of the situation. He feels disconnected from the trial, as though he is an observer rather than the accused. Despite his lawyer's efforts, Massault is found guilty and sentenced to death by guillotine. Awaiting execution, Massault spends his days in his cell, reflecting on his life with a detached curiosity. He rejects the notion of appealing his sentence, accepting the inevitability of death. The prison chaplain visits, insisting that Massault turn to God for comfort. Massault vehemently refuses, asserting his disbelief in God and any higher meaning. In a passionate outburst, Massault confronts the chaplain, expressing that life is meaningless and that all humans are condemned to die. This is a moment of clarity for Massault, a realization that the universe is indifferent, and so is he. He finds peace in acknowledging the absurdity of existence, embracing the physical world and his own sensations as the only truths. As the novel concludes, Massault awaits his execution with a sense of calm. He hopes that a large, hostile crowd will attend, so he won't feel alone in his final moments. His acceptance of his fate and the absurdity of life marks the culmination of his existential journey. Massault is the embodiment of existential philosophy. His detachment and indifference challenge societal norms about emotion, morality, and meaning. He doesn't fit into conventional roles. He doesn't grieve as expected, love as desired, or adhere to moral codes. His journey is one of self-realization, not in a transformative sense, but in a deeper understanding of his true nature and the nature of existence. Marie Cardona represents the allure of normalcy and connection. She seeks love and commitment from Massault, desiring a conventional relationship. Her inability to fully grasp Massault's detachment adds a layer of tragedy to their relationship. Marie's character highlights the human need for connection and the pain that arises when it is unreciprocated. Raymond Sins serves as a catalyst for the central conflict. His manipulative and violent tendencies contrast with Massault's passivity. Raymond's involvement drags Massault into circumstances that ultimately lead to the murder. He embodies moral ambiguity, blurring the lines between victim and perpetrator. The chaplain symbolizes society's insistence on imposing meaning and seeking redemption. His confrontation with Massault highlights the clash between existential acceptance and traditional beliefs. The chaplain cannot comprehend Massault's rejection of God and meaning, reflecting society's discomfort with the absurd. The stranger delves into the philosophy of absurdism, exploring the idea that human life has no inherent meaning. Massault's character embodies this concept, living in the moment without concern for past or future. His actions are guided by physical sensations rather than emotions or societal expectations. The theme of alienation is prevalent. Massault is an outsider, disconnected from those around him. His inability or unwillingness to conform isolates him, leading to his downfall. The novel questions the consequences of not adhering to societal norms and the inherent judgment that comes with being different. The absurdity of the legal system is highlighted during the trial. The focus on Massalt's character rather than the crime itself critiques how society prioritizes conformity over justice. The trial becomes a spectacle of moral condemnation rather than an objective examination of facts. Mortality and the inevitability of death are central to Massalt's transformation. His acceptance of death reflects a liberation from fear and societal constraints. The novel suggests that acknowledging life's absurdity allows for true freedom. The setting of Algiers provides a vivid backdrop, a place where the intense sun and heat influence the character's experiences. The relentless sunlight is almost a character itself, affecting Massalt's actions and emotions. The beach scene, with its glaring sun and shimmering sea, creates a sensory overload that contributes to the tension leading to the murder. The cultural landscape of French Algeria adds layers to the narrative. The underlying tensions between the French colonists and the Arab population are subtly woven into the story, reflecting the complexities of colonial society. The atmosphere is one of oppressive normalcy, a world that expects conformity and punishes deviation. The mundane details of Massalt's daily life contrast with the profound philosophical questions the novel raises. While Massalt himself is detached, the reader becomes emotionally invested in his fate. His honesty and refusal to pretend evoke both frustration and empathy. The injustice of his trial and the inevitability of his execution stir a sense of indignation. The novel provokes introspection. It challenges readers to consider their own beliefs about meaning, morality, and the expectations society places upon individuals. Massalt's confrontation with the chaplain is a powerful moment that forces readers to confront uncomfortable truths about existence. The Stranger is a profound exploration of what it means to exist in an indifferent universe. Through Massalt's journey, Albert Camus invites readers to question the constructs of society, the nature of reality, and the search for meaning in a meaningless world. The novel doesn't offer easy answers, but instead presents a character who embodies the struggle against absurdity. Massalt's acceptance of his fate and his embrace of the present moment challenge us to consider how we navigate our own lives. In the end, The Stranger leaves us with a lingering contemplation of our place in the world. It reminds us that sometimes the most profound connections and understandings come not from grand gestures or deep emotions, but from the simple acknowledgement of what is. As we close this journey with Massault, we're left to ponder the essence of our own existence, the societal expectations that shape us, and the possibility of finding peace within the absurdity of life. Step back in time to the early 20th century American South, where the echoes of a fading aristocracy linger in the humid air, and the once grand estates stand as silent witnesses to the relentless march of time. In the heart of Mississippi lies Yoknapatawpha County, a fictional yet vividly realized landscape created by William Faulkner. It's here that the Compson family, a lineage steeped in Southern tradition and honor, faces the inexorable decline of their fortunes and the unraveling of their family bonds. The Sound and the Fury invites us into this intricate world, offering a profound exploration of love, loss, and the fragmented nature of time itself. The story unfolds through the eyes of four narrators, each providing a unique perspective on the Compson family's disintegration. The narrative is nonlinear, mirroring the chaos and confusion that envelop the characters' lives. The novel begins on April 7th, 1928, through the eyes of Benjamin Benji Compson, the youngest son. Benji is 33 years old and has a severe intellectual disability. He cannot speak and experiences the world in a constant flux of sensory impressions and memories that blur the lines between past and present. As Benji wanders the grounds of the decaying Compson estate, his thoughts drift fluidly through time. He is acutely sensitive to sights, sounds, and smells, particularly those associated with his sister, Candace Caddy Compson. Caddy is the center of Benji's world. Her scent of trees and the warmth of her presence are anchors in his tumultuous mind. Memories of playing together as children surface vividly. Caddy climbing a tree to look in on their grandmother's funeral, muddying her drawers in the process. Her comforting Benji when he's upset, whispering soothing words to calm his distress. But these happy recollections are intertwined with moments of profound loss. Benji recalls times when Caddy begins to distance herself, her maturation creating an invisible barrier he cannot comprehend. He senses changes in her, first when she wears perfume, which he finds unsettling, and later when she kisses boys, an act that disturbs him deeply. The most painful memory is of Caddy's wedding. Benji doesn't understand the ceremony, but feels the permanence of her departure. Her absence leaves a void that nothing else can fill. Benji's present is filled with routine and caretaking by the family's black servants, particularly Diley Gibson, who shows him kindness and patience. Yet his days are marred by moments of confusion and distress, often exacerbated by his older brother, Jason, who harbors resentment towards him. Benji's narrative, though fragmented and disorienting, paints a poignant picture of innocence lost and the enduring impact of Caddy's absence on his life. Shifting back in time to June 2nd, 1910, the narrative enters the mind of Quentin Compson, the eldest son, on the day he decides to take his own life. Quentin is a sensitive and introspective young man, attending Harvard University, but deeply troubled by his family's decline and the erosion of Southern values he holds dear. He is obsessed with concepts of honor, purity, and the passage of time, symbolized by his fixation on his grandfather's pocket watch, which he deliberately breaks to stop its incessant ticking. Quentin is tormented by Caddy's sexual promiscuity and her pregnancy out of wedlock. He idealizes her purity and cannot reconcile her actions with his rigid moral code. In his desperation, he even concocts a false confession to their father, claiming that he and Caddy committed incest, hoping to shoulder her shame and preserve her honor. Mr. Compson dismisses his confession, seeing through the lie and highlighting the disconnect between Quentin's idealism and the pragmatic cynicism of his father. Throughout the day, Quentin wanders the streets of Cambridge, Massachusetts, his thoughts spiraling into chaos. He encounters a young Italian girl and, in an attempt to protect her, ends up causing more confusion and attracting the attention of the police. He gets into a fight with local boys, reflecting his internal turmoil and aggression. Quentin's disjointed interactions and obsessive ruminations illustrate his inability to cope with reality. As the day wanes, he fills his pockets with metal weights and walks into the Charles River, drowning himself in a final escape from the relentless flow of time and the burdens of his conscience. Returning to the present of 1928, the narrative shifts to Jason Compson IV, the bitter and spiteful third son. Jason is consumed by anger and resentment towards his siblings, particularly Caddy, whom he blames for the family's misfortunes. Unlike Quentin's introspective anguish, Jason's cynicism is outwardly directed, manifesting in cruelty and manipulation. He works at a local farm supply store, a position he despises, feeling it beneath his family's stature. Jason is responsible for the financial well-being of the household, but he embezzles money sent by Caddy for the care of her daughter, Miss Quinton, who now lives with the family. He intercepts the checks and tells his mother that Caddy has neglected them, fostering Mrs. Compson's disdain for her only daughter. Jason's treatment of Miss Quinton is harsh and controlling. He monitors her activities, restricts her freedoms, and subjects her to verbal and emotional abuse. His actions are driven by a desire for control and retribution, channeling his frustrations into tormenting those around him. Miss Quinton, a rebellious and spirited teenager, chafes under Jason's oppressive authority. She seeks escape from the suffocating environment of the Compson household, engaging in clandestine relationships and defying societal expectations. One day, she discovers that Jason has been stealing her mother's money and decides to take matters into her own hands. She steals several $1,000s from Jason's locked box and runs away with a man from a traveling circus. Jason, enraged by her defiance and the loss of the money, embarks on a frantic pursuit. His desperation leads him to consult the local sheriff, but his reputation and past actions garner little sympathy. The sheriff dismisses his pleas, pointing out that Jason's own dishonesty has led to this predicament. Jason's failure to retrieve Miss Quinton or the money intensifies his bitterness, leaving him isolated and consumed by his own spite. The final section of the novel shifts to a third-person narrative centered on Diley Gibson, the Compson family's loyal and long-suffering servant. It is Easter Sunday, a day symbolic of rebirth and hope, yet the Compson household remains mired in dysfunction. Diley rises early to prepare for church, tending to Benji with maternal care and ensuring that the household runs as smoothly as possible amidst the chaos. Diley's presence is a stark contrast to the Compsons' moral decay. She embodies strength, compassion, and resilience, providing stability where the family members cannot. At church, Diley listens to a powerful sermon that speaks of endurance and the promise of redemption. The preacher's words resonate deeply with her, offering a glimmer of hope in the face of the family's disintegration. Upon returning home, the fragile semblance of order begins to crumble. Jason's fury over Miss Quinton's disappearance leads to explosive confrontations. Mrs. Compson retreats further into her hypochondria and self-pity, oblivious to the needs of those around her. Benji becomes agitated when his routine is disrupted, his distress echoing the overall turmoil of the household. In a climactic scene, Luster, Diley's grandson, takes Benji for a carriage ride. Unaware of the importance of following the same route, Luster makes a wrong turn, causing Benji to erupt into hysterical howls. The familiar sights and patterns are crucial to Benji's sense of security, and the deviation plunges him into panic. Jason, passing by, intervenes angrily, striking Luster and redirecting the carriage onto the correct path. As they resume the familiar route, Benji calms down, his silence highlighting the fragile balance that maintains his world. The novel closes with a poignant reflection on the cyclical nature of time and the inescapable grip of the past. The Compson family's decline is complete, their legacy tarnished, their bonds severed. Diley, observing the remnants of the family she has served for decades, acknowledges the end of an era. She has seen the first and the last, recognizing that the Compsons, once pillars of Southern aristocracy, have succumbed to the relentless forces of change and their own internal failings. The Sound and the Fury delves deep into the complexities of its characters, offering a rich tapestry of motivations and inner struggles. Benji's innocence and sensory perceptions provide a raw and unfiltered view of the family's dynamics. His attachment to Caddy is pure and unwavering, highlighting the profound impact she has on those around her. His inability to understand the changes and losses in his life evokes a deep sense of empathy. Quentin's character embodies the tragic consequences of idealism clashing with reality. His obsession with honor, purity, and the preservation of Southern values leads him down a path of self-destruction. Quentin's internal conflict over Caddy's sexuality and the family's dishonor consumes him, illustrating the destructive power of unattainable ideals and the suffocating weight of societal expectations. Jason represents the corrosive effects of bitterness and resentment. His pragmatic approach to life is overshadowed by his vindictive nature. Jason's manipulation of his mother, mistreatment of Miss Quentin, and embezzlement of funds reveal a man desperate for control, yet incapable of genuine connection. His failures and frustrations are projected onto others, perpetuating a cycle of anger and isolation. Caddy, though never given a direct voice in the novel, is the linchpin of the family's narrative. Her actions and choices significantly impact each of her brothers, reflecting themes of innocence lost and the complexities of female agency in a restrictive society. Caddy's defiance of traditional roles challenges the moral fabric of the family, and her absence leaves a void that cannot be filled. Diley stands as a beacon of endurance and compassion amidst the family's chaos. Her unwavering dedication to the Compsons, despite their flaws and the societal limitations imposed upon her, highlights the themes of sacrifice and moral strength. Diley's perspective offers a grounding force in the narrative, emphasizing the potential for dignity and humanity in the face of adversity. The novel intricately weaves themes of time, memory, and the decline of the Southern aristocracy. The fragmented narrative structure mirrors the disintegration of the Compson family and the fluidity of time as experienced by the characters. Faulkner's use of stream of consciousness immerses the reader in the inner worlds of the narrators, emphasizing their personal struggles and distorted perceptions. The setting of Yoknapatawpha County serves as more than just a backdrop. It is an integral part of the story. The decaying Compson estate symbolizes the erosion of traditional Southern values and the inevitable change sweeping through the region. The lush, oppressive landscape of the South, with its sweltering heat and haunting beauty, reflects the characters' inner turmoil and the weight of their histories. Faulkner's portrayal of the societal and racial dynamics of the time adds depth to the narrative. The interactions between the Compsons and the black servants, particularly Diley, highlight the entrenched hierarchies and prejudices of the era. Yet, Diley's moral superiority and resilience challenge these constructs, offering a critique of the social order. Emotionally, the novel is a compelling exploration of human suffering and the search for meaning in a fractured world. The reader is drawn into the characters' experiences, feeling Benji's confusion, Quentin's despair, Jason's rage, and Diley's quiet strength. The shifting perspectives and nonlinear timeline require active engagement, mirroring the characters' attempts to make sense of their lives. The Sound and the Fury does not provide easy answers or resolutions. Instead, it presents a tapestry of interconnected lives, each grappling with personal demons and societal pressures. The novel invites reflection on themes such as the nature of time, the impact of the past on the present, and the complexities of familial relationships. It challenges readers to consider the ways in which individuals navigate their identities within the confines of tradition and change. In the end, the Compson family story is a tragic reflection on the impermanence of glory and the inevitable decline that follows hubris and neglect. Their struggles are both deeply personal and universally resonant, capturing the essence of human frailty and the enduring quest for meaning. Faulkner's masterful storytelling and rich characterization ensure that The Sound and the Fury remains a timeless exploration of the human condition, leaving readers to ponder the echoes of the past and the possibilities of redemption amidst despair. As we close this journey with the Compson family, we are left to reflect on our own connections to time, memory, and the forces that shape our lives. The novel serves as a poignant reminder of the complexities of existence and the profound impact of our choices on ourselves and those around us. Through the fractured narratives and emotional depth, Faulkner invites us to find meaning in the midst of chaos and to seek understanding within the sound and the fury of life itself. Imagine the bustling streets of St. Petersburg in the sweltering heat of a Russian summer during the 1860s. The city is alive with activity, yet beneath its vibrant facade lies a world of desperation and poverty. In a cramped, dilapidated apartment, a young ex-student named Rodion Romanovich Raskolnikov grapples with his thoughts. Tall, handsome, but disheveled, his piercing eyes reflect a mind in turmoil, burdened by extreme poverty and a sense of isolation. He teeters on the brink of a monumental decision that will alter the course of his life. Raskolnikov is consumed by an extraordinary idea. He believes that certain extraordinary individuals possess the right to transgress moral laws to achieve a higher purpose. Inspired by figures like Napoleon, he theorizes that great men can commit acts deemed immoral if it leads to the greater good. This philosophy takes root in his mind, festering alongside his dire circumstances. Desperate for money, Raskolnikov visits Alyona Ivanovna, a miserly old pawnbroker known for exploiting the destitute. Her greed and cruelty become a symbol of societal decay in his eyes. He pawns a silver watch, barely receiving enough to sustain himself. As he leaves, a sinister plan begins to form, a plan to murder Alyona and redistribute her wealth to those in need, believing this act will affirm his theory and elevate him beyond the confines of ordinary morality. Haunted by his thoughts, Raskolnikov wanders the streets, lost in a haze of feverish contemplation. He encounters Marmeladov, a drunken former official, who pours out his woes in a dimly lit tavern. Marmeladov speaks of his family's suffering, his consumptive wife Katerina Ivanovna and his daughter Sonia, who has been forced into prostitution to support them. This meeting deepens Raskolnikov's awareness of the pervasive misery around him. Upon returning home, Raskolnikov receives a letter from his mother, Pulcheria Alexandrovna. She writes of his sister Dunya's impending marriage to a wealthy lawyer, Fyodor Petrovich Luzin. Raskolnikov perceives this union as a sacrifice on Dunya's part to secure financial stability for the family. The thought fills him with anger and guilt, reinforcing his resolve to carry out his plan. The day arrives. In a state of detached determination, Raskolnikov makes his way to Alyona's apartment under the pretense of pawning an item. The tension is palpable as he ascends the stairs, each step echoing like a heartbeat. Once inside, time seems to slow. In a sudden, brutal act, he strikes Alyona with an axe, killing her instantly. As he searches for valuables, her half-sister Lizaveta unexpectedly enters. Shocked and terrified, Raskolnikov reacts on impulse, murdering her as well. Fleeing the scene, he returns to his room, overwhelmed by panic and nausea. The gravity of his actions crashes down upon him. He hides the stolen goods under a rock in a random courtyard, unable to bring himself to use them. The wealth that was supposed to justify his crime becomes a burden, a physical manifestation of his guilt. Raskolnikov falls into a delirious fever, oscillating between paranoia and indifference. He isolates himself, avoiding all human contact. His friend Razumikin, a loyal and optimistic ex-student, becomes concerned. Razumikin's attempts to help are met with resistance, but his persistence provides a lifeline for Raskolnikov. Meanwhile, the city buzzes with news of the murders. The police begin their investigation, and Raskolnikov is summoned to the station over an unrelated matter. The coincidence unnerves him, and his erratic behavior arouses the suspicions of Porfiry Petrovich, the astute examining magistrate. Porfiry is intrigued by Raskolnikov's published article on criminal psychology, which discusses the very ideas that led to the murder. As Raskolnikov grapples with his conscience, he crosses paths with Sonia Marmeladova, the embodiment of innocence tainted by circumstance. Drawn to her selflessness and suffering, he confides in her, finding a kindred spirit who understands the depths of human despair. Sonia, guided by her devout faith, becomes a beacon of hope for Raskolnikov. Tensions escalate when Luzin arrives, intent on marrying Dunya. His pompous and manipulative nature becomes evident as he attempts to assert control over the family. Raskolnikov confronts Luzin, exposing his true character and prompting Dunya to break off the engagement. This act liberates Dunya, but intensifies the family's financial woes. Porfiry Petrovich continues his psychological cat-and-mouse game with Raskolnikov. In a series of probing conversations, Porfiry hints at his suspicions, using subtle manipulation to unsettle Raskolnikov. The walls begin to close in as Raskolnikov's mental state deteriorates. He oscillates between arrogance, believing himself above the law, and crushing guilt that gnaws at his soul. In a pivotal moment, Raskolnikov meets Svidrigailov, Dunya's former employer with a dark past. Svidrigailov reveals his obsession with Dunya and offers Raskolnikov assistance. Their interactions are fraught with tension, as Svidrigailov embodies the amoral freedom Raskolnikov thought he desired. Yet, witnessing Svidrigailov's depravity forces Raskolnikov to confront the reality of his own actions. The climax builds as Raskolnikov teeters on the edge of confession. Sonia urges him to seek redemption through suffering, emphasizing the importance of accepting responsibility. Torn between his ideology and the unbearable weight of his guilt, he finally breaks. In a raw and emotional scene, he confesses his crime to Sonia, who responds with compassion rather than condemnation. Determined to face his fate, Raskolnikov turns himself in. He is sentenced to 8 years of hard labor in Siberia. Sonia follows him, offering unwavering support. In the harsh landscape of the prison camp, Raskolnikov endures physical hardships and internal battles. It is here, stripped of all pretense, that he begins a slow and painful transformation. Through Sonia's love and the shared suffering with his fellow inmates, Raskolnikov experiences a spiritual awakening. The novel concludes with a glimmer of hope, a rebirth of sorts, as he opens himself up to the possibility of redemption and genuine human connection. Raskolnikov is a complex and multifaceted protagonist. His intellectual arrogance masks a deep-seated insecurity and compassion for others. He embodies the conflict between reason and emotion, wrestling with philosophical theories that clash with his innate morality. His journey is one of descent into madness and gradual emergence into self-awareness. Sonia represents purity and self-sacrifice. Despite her circumstances, she maintains a steadfast faith and compassion that inspire those around her. She serves as Raskolnikov's moral compass, guiding him toward redemption. Porfiry Petrovich is a cunning and insightful investigator. His psychological tactics peel back the layers of Raskolnikov's facade, revealing the turmoil within. Porfiry's methods highlight the battle between intellects and the power of conscience. Razumikin provides a foil to Raskolnikov. His practicality, kindness, and dedication contrast sharply with Raskolnikov's isolation and despair. Razumikin's growing relationship with Dunya adds depth to his character, showcasing his capacity for love and loyalty. Svidrigailov is a shadowy figure whose hedonism and disregard for morality serve as a dark mirror for Raskolnikov. His ultimate suicide underscores the emptiness of a life devoid of ethical grounding. Crime and Punishment delves deep into themes of morality, redemption, and the psychology of crime. It examines the idea of whether ends can justify means and the consequences of transgressing moral boundaries. The novel explores the duality of human nature, the capacity for both good and evil within a single individual. Raskolnikov's internal struggle reflects the conflict between nihilism and compassion. The theme of isolation versus connection is prevalent. Raskolnikov's alienation exacerbates his descent, while his interactions with Sonia and others begin his path to healing. Suffering as a path to redemption is a central message. Through physical and emotional pain, characters find meaning and the possibility of spiritual renewal. St. Petersburg is depicted as a city of contrasts, vibrant yet suffocating, grand yet squalid. The oppressive atmosphere mirrors Raskolnikov's mental state. Narrow, dirty streets and overcrowded tenements create a sense of claustrophobia. Dostoevsky's vivid descriptions immerse the reader in the sensory experiences of the city. The stench of poverty, the heat of summer, the cacophony of urban life. The setting becomes a character itself, influencing and reflecting the character's actions. The bleakness of Siberia represents both punishment and the potential for renewal. The stark landscape forces Raskolnikov to confront his inner self stripped of societal distractions. The narrative evokes a range of emotions, from tension and dread during the murder to empathy and hope in Raskolnikov's quest for redemption. The psychological depth of the characters draws readers into their inner worlds. The suspense of whether Raskolnikov will be caught keeps the audience engaged, while the exploration of his psyche provokes introspection about morality and justice. Sonia's unwavering compassion elicits admiration and serves as an emotional anchor amidst the darkness. Crime and Punishment is a profound exploration of the human psyche and the complexities of moral philosophy. Through Raskolnikov's journey, Dostoevsky delves into the ramifications of intellectual hubris and the search for redemption. The novel challenges readers to consider the nature of justice and the possibility of forgiveness. It portrays the struggle between the allure of grand theories and the grounding reality of human compassion. In the end, Raskolnikov's acceptance of his humanity and the love extended to him by Sonia offer a hopeful message that even in the depths of despair, redemption is attainable through connection and acceptance of one's flaws. The story remains a timeless reflection on the conflicts that reside within us all, urging a contemplation of the values that define our actions and the paths we choose toward atonement.